Well,
I love it.
I'd like to go over this a little bit again, the control mechanism that they actually use here. And that is, on the one hand, they try to
Yes,
be reasonable. And they
that's
try to
right.
say things like, well, doctors say this, and experts say that. And we've done polls, and we've listened to the people, and we've come to the conclusion that now is the time to do this particular policy, whatever it may be. Okay, so they're trying to be, democratic.
That's right.
And then once you've been, seduced into the feeling that your government is your friend, and they're trying
That's
to
right.
help you, then then when something comes, you've been put to sleep, then they'll nail you with some emergency. They'll say, "Oh my God, we have a new, pestilence in the land,
That's right.
or a new emergency situation, and we have to
That's
do
right.
some sudden, emergencies act,
Right.
or whatever it may be." And that's known as, again, as the carrot and the stick.
The stick. Yes.
And they will hit you with that stick on an individual basis, and maybe even on a community basis,
Correct.
by, as you mentioned, stopping your travel.
Yes.
You can't see your mother in the next province.
Right.
You can't travel overseas
Right.
to do business, or even have
That's
a
right.
vacation. And it's all to do with constricting your individual liberty.
That's right.
And there's a philosophical point here. If they constrict your physical liberty,
Hmm. Hmm.
they're also constricting your intellectual and spiritual liberty.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. Because if you feel that you've been locked into your home,
Hmm.
then you can't express yourself anymore
Correct.
publicly. You can't talk anymore. You can't.
Yes.
You can't. Communicate, and that's the whole point here.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
whole point.
Yeah. You
It's
bet.
difficult for them to always control your mind.
Yep.
It's much easier for them to control your body.
That's right.
It reminds me of the great, the great Russian writer,
Hmm.
Dostoevsky, who explained I think it was the brothers Karamazov, where where someone has been arrested by the secret police and sent to Siberia,
Hmm.
and they have him chained in a rail car. And
Hmm.
he's thinking to himself, well, they've chained my body to the wall, and they're taking me to Siberia, but they can never put chains on my thoughts, on
Right.
my mind.
Right.
They can never
Right.
stop me from thinking the truth.
Absolutely.
And that's the reality.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're in dangerous times. So
Hmm.
some people, you don't need to order them. You don't need to
That's
chain
right.
them. You can manipulate their thoughts quite easily,
Correct.
using the power of propaganda,
That's right.
the power of modern media,
That's right.
peer pressure.
Of course.
And as an educator, I'm shocked by what happens in schools,
Hmm. Hmm.
and the percentage of students who are, even though they believe that
Hmm.
what's going on around them is nonsense, they're afraid to stand up and express themselves as sovereign individuals, because it's will create an abusive situation for them.
That's right.
Did I tell you about the case where there's been permission slips presented to students in order to go on a field trip or something like that in my community here in Vancouver,
Mm,
where on there they have to put their parents' signature, and they have
mhm,
to put some personal information. And there's a
mhm.
couple of boxes there. It says you identify yourself as a male, a
Right,
female,
right.
or another.
Oh,
Now, I can't quite remember ever seeing a third choice anytime I was in school.
right.
Did you see a third gender choice on any of your particular family's communications with the school? Did they ever
Nope,
ask you if you have an other in the house?
nope.
Well, it's happening right now
Yep,
here in this neighborhood, and I can't
yep,
believe it. It's
yeah.
horrendous.
They try to slip that in without you knowing.
They do. They
Yeah,
do. They infiltrate. into
Yeah.
our consciousness this concept of there's
That's
another,
right.
there's a speculative third gender.
Correct.
All right. Now, I was talking to one of my students, and he's about 14, 15, and he's a very, very wise and smart boy for his age.
Yeah.
And you know what he
Yeah.
said to me? He said, we didn't say anything. We just laugh at it inside.
Right.
And
Right.
and he said, me and all my friends, we all checked other. He's
Tosser.
yeah, he said there must be 70 or 80% of the class that checked other,
Right.
because that's what young people do. They
That's right.
see the truth and they
Yeah.
rebel against
Oh,
what they
yeah.
see as nonsense.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, if they're sensitive enough to pick up those little cues, then yeah, I mean, the younger ones are very smart.
Yes, they
Okay. Too
are.
bad there are a lot of people within the communities that are so heavily desensitized,
Yes.
they don't pick things up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, by the way, I may have shared with you either earlier today or yesterday,
Yes.
Richmond News.
Yes.
Right. One of the community members
Uh-huh.
actually had a meeting with the city councilors and mayors,
Yes.
and she outright challenged our mayor
Yes.
to reason why, the mandates and so on,
Uh-huh.
why when we press further asking you questions, suddenly you turn around and, goes into closed meetings and approve a lot of bylaws without our consent.
Interesting. Very
Yes,
interesting.
I think I might have shared that link with you. If not, then I'll redo it again
Well,
later
I've
today.
noticed it's a trend. It's a trend
That's right.
across all municipal governments,
That's right.
all federal governments, all provincial governments, and the reason for that is I believe that they've all been infiltrated over the last,
Of course.
especially the last 20 years.
Of
And it
course.
started in the
Okay.
universities, in the political clubs,
That's
and all
right.
these people were siphoned or
That's right.
directed to enter community services and
Correct.
local politics. And
That's
you know
right.
what I suspect? I
What?
suspect that the reason they could do that successfully is because they had an unfair advantage. I think that
Of course.
there were so-called uh, what do they call them? Non-profit organizations
Hmm.
headed by certain billionaires, which names I
Hmm.
won't mention, who
Hmm.
have been over a long period of time
Hmm.
secretly financing these people.
Of course.
Running for public office is not
Of
easy.
course.
It
Like the
costs
Chinese
thousands, tens of
billionaires
thousands.
laundering their money in River Rock Casino, then turn around and bribe them
Absolutely. It takes tens
left,
of
right, and
thousands of
center.
dollars. And you can have a normal job, but it's difficult, and when you're raising a family especially, to do so-called community service. These
That's
people are
right.
not doing community service. They're doing paid infiltration
That's
into
right.
our political systems at every
That's right.
level, from the libraries to
Of
the school
course.
boards to the municipal governments to the park boards. These people are not doing it. In the past, it was done as a
Mhm.
form of community service, but
That's
no,
right.
they hijacked the entire system, and there's people are getting money in a secret
That's right.
form in an offshore bank account. And I'll give
Oops.
you an example that I personally know
Sure,
about.
please. Yep.
We had a premier in here in BC not too long ago. She was the head of the Liberal Party,
Right.
and I'm not going to mention names as usual, but she had a salary of as a an MP of
Yep.
approximately 80,000 a year, and then
Yep.
as the actual prime minister, she had the salary in BC, I believe, was 130,000.
Right.
It looks very humble, actually.
Hmm.
It looks very reasonable, right? Well, the
Hmm.
only thing is that before she became premier,
Hmm.
her initials, by the way, are CC.
Right.
Um, Before she
Krispy
became,
Kreme. I know the name. Krispy
yes,
Kreme.
yeah,
Yes.
Krispy Kreme,
Awesome.
but her son magically was able to afford to go to St. George's, which is the most exclusive and
Most
expensive private
exclusive,
school.
prestigious private school.
And you know what? There's only one problem. I personally happen to have a friend of mine that lived in Burnaby, who's
Right.
in the same profession as myself. who
Yes.
personally tutored that boy.
Mm.
And because he came from a broken home,
Right.
she was a single mom,
Right.
scraping by on an MP's salary of 80 something thousand a year.
Right.
But somehow that boy, who was not very good at English or math or
Mm.
socials and
Mm.
who had a mediocre report card in the neighborhood of C pluses and B's,
Mm.
got accepted to St. George's, which requires a straight A average and a very, very high SSAT score.
Right.
How did he get in?
Hmm.
And how did
Makes you
she?
wonder, eh?
And how did she afford the $45,000 a year fee?
Hmm.
That's almost 50% of your entire income.
Of course.
Where'd that money come from?
Hmm.
This is the kind
Yeah.
of system that they use: special
That's right.
privileges, unknown sources of income.
That's right.
It's all obfuscated. It's all muddied, and we don't really know. But the
Mm-hmm.
fact is, we find out in the end when all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden our society is getting twisted, our children are getting indoctrinated, and our
Yep.
freedoms are being taken away by a
That's
bunch
right.
of people that we thought we elected. But no, we selected. We selected them
Mhm.
because there was nobody else on the plate.
That's right.
There was no one else there that we could vote for because the big flashy signs were paid for by outside money sources. The
Mm.
advertising on the internet and on TV, which costs a huge amount of money, far beyond the financial resources of these individuals.
Right.
There's a hidden hand offering them up into our purview,
That's right.
and the real civic patriots, the real people who want to represent their community, are crushed. They're
As
crushed
always,
by
yes.
this massive machine
Yeah.
of control and influence.
That's right.
And this is the world that we have to erase. This is the
Correct.
situation we have to rectify in order to
That's
achieve
right.
freedom and dignity.
Indeed.
And you can tell
But I
me,
must say
yeah,
though, all hopes are not lost.
mm-hmm,
The so-called pandemic has backfired in such a way that a lot of people are awake and aware
oh
because
yeah,
they have sharpened their senses to the point where they would quickly pick up on many little cues
oh, you mean the
and
little cue of
respond to
your
them.
child getting a huge side effect from some medical procedure? That's a cue, isn't it?
That's right. And what else? It's like, well, 2 years ago at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of academic institutions
Mm-hmm.
also follow the marching orders, impose what we refer to as the chemical treatments to
Right.
the unaware, so that, in exchange for the ability to stay on the dormitory, go to school, go to class, blah blah blah, and nobody well, let's just say that back then nobody realized the consequence to that.
But I'm a
Okay.
person who all
But
my
basically,
life,
it's
yep.
more of an exchanging, your freedom.
Oh, and so there's a wake up call to
That's
someone
right.
who normally wouldn't think twice about the situation, but they
That's right.
maybe they live in a an interior community in a rural area, and
Right.
all their lives they've been self sufficient, never needed a
That's
doctor, and
right.
they
That's
always ate
right.
organic food. The whole concept of having to
That's
take inoculations or something is quite foreign and bizarre to them
that's
because they've
right.
been healthy as horses
Hmm.
for generations. And then all of a
Hmm.
sudden, their son or daughter gets accepted to a city university where
Right.
they're offered the chance to, I don't know, become an intellectual, become
That's
a,
right.
some kind of scientist or inventor or something. And then they're
Right.
told that they cannot live there
Correct.
without taking
Chemical
an
treatment.
abominable chemical treatment.
That's
Now,
right.
what kind of betrayal is that?
Well, fast forward to this past summer,
Yes.
a month ago, one of these East Coast universities tried to try to reinforce the chemical treatments again.
And they got a rebellion pushback.
And lo and behold, I mean, it's just in just a matter of
Yep.
hours, the very next day, I mean, the students and the concerned students and parents
Yes.
suddenly rose up and start protesting.
Yes, and that's only possible because it was already cooking. There was already a
That's
bun in
right.
the oven. That
That's
the
right.
freedom meal was ready
That's
to be
right.
served, and
Correct.
when they tried to stop that, it
Yes.
was too late, and they
That's right.
learned their lesson. They had to back
That's
down,
right.
and this is the
Well,
world we live in.
right. Their wording for backing down was not fully complete. They just say they postponed it for 1 year. But
Uh
that's not good
huh.
enough. Apparently, after the uprising of protests from those concerned students and
Uh
their
huh.
parents,
Uh huh.
now is their own workers and instructor
Uh
unions
huh.
within that university who have filed lawsuit against the university,
And listen to the
citing
logic.
the same thing.
Listen to the logic. We'll postpone it for 1 year. What? What's that got to do with the pandemic? Pandemics are now, not 1 year later. You see, there's
Right?
no connection between a so-called health emergency and what they're doing.
That's right. That's
What they're
right.
doing is trying to destroy your freedom. It has nothing to
Correct.
do with any actual medical reality. Okay,
Correct.
and that's becoming apparent. So
That's right.
in a sense, you're correct. The actual attempts by
Mm-hmm.
our infiltrated and non-democratic government institutions
That's
to
right.
impose draconian, totalitarian on us
Mm-hmm.
is backfiring because the people are waking up to the fact that they're lying, they're cheating,
Precisely.
they're probably secretly benefiting financially through
That's right.
their family trusts,
Mm-hmm.
which make investments in God knows what companies selling God
Mm-hmm.
knows what because it's a family trust and therefore we cannot see,
That's right.
and they're not
That's
transparent, and
right.
these people are not working for us,
Correct.
and that's the final revelation. The final
That's
revelation is that you have to wipe them all away. You have to cancel
that's
them.
right. Start all over again.
They're not going to cancel you. You're going to cancel them. You're going to make
That's right.
a clean slate. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
make a white sheet out of the
Mm-hmm.
entire political system because it's corrupt, it's contaminated, and there's nothing you can do. And people who stand up, the next one that stands up says, "Oh, I will save you. Oh, I'm going to debate in the House of Commons against the policies of my predecessor." Don't listen to that for 10 seconds or
Mm-hmm.
even 1 second, because
That's right.
that's just the game. It's like the shark who
Yep.
goes feeding in the water and bites into another fish or whale, and
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
loses a few teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the shark has the amazing ability to a new row of teeth grow up
That's
out
right.
of its mouth within a couple days,
That's right.
and
It pretty much has everything all lined up.
that's right. It's all ready to
Yep.
go,
That's
and
right.
they've got it lined up for generations.
Yep.
You can have a prime minister in the 1970s and 80s, and
That's right.
his progeny will pop up in your face in the 90s and the 2000s,
Yes.
or later. You know, they've got it all set up in long term plans in order to keep you under control and to keep the door to your chicken coop tightly
Locked.
closed.
That's right.